fuel tank on the Honda S660 is located just in front of the engine underneath the car. But first of all we need to disconnect the battery. Start by removing the cargo compartment in the front or under the bonnet at the front of the car. There are 4 metal clips that just need twisting anti-clockwise, and this will allow the compartment to be lifted out of the car. For access to the terminals, all we need to do is fold over this plastic cover. If we are looking to remove the battery completely, there are 2 10mm bolts holding the battery down, and we're just disconnecting the battery with a 10mm and tucking the negative lead out of the way. To access all the fuel hoses, we need to remove the intake for the intercooler, and it will help to remove the intercooler as well, as there are fuel pipes located underneath it. I have actually removed the bonnet, or the rear engine cover, for the purpose of making the video and making the job much easier to do. All the fixings are 10mm on the intake and on the intercooler. Now to disconnect all the fuel hoses. So we've got the filler and breather hoses with these strong clips on. We've got all the other feed pipes that we need to remove, and once they're all loose, then we can raise the car and get ready to drop the tank. Remove this plastic under tray. There are 3 trim clips that can be unscrewed and 2 10mm bolts at the front. Disconnect this wheel arch trim from the fuel tank guard. Now there are just 4 14mm bolts holding the tank in position. The metal shield doesn't need to be removed. Now, using a transmission jack, we can undo the bolts completely, and once the 4 bolts have been removed, the part that the metal guard is attached to is separate from the tank. It's just a carrier. Slowly drop the tank, watching the hoses at the top, making sure that you haven't forgotten to disconnect anything, and once you have the tank clear of the car, we can remove the carrier and slowly drop the tank so we can move it onto the ground to get the pump out of position. So now we have the tank on the ground, we can disconnect the wiring and fuel pipes. Now there is actually a special tool for the removal of the fuel pump assembly, but this can be removed successfully and carefully using a large screwdriver and a hammer. Now they'll most likely be very stiff. It's a plastic on plastic thread and there's no lubrication on there, so this did take quite a while, and even once it was loose it was quite a struggle to undo by hand. But finally we can remove the fuel pump assembly. So we just need to be careful. You'll be able to see if you look down into the tank. There's a float that comes off to the side of the assembly. Now we need to be very careful not to bend the metal that attaches this. So you'll see here I am spilling quite a bit of fuel, but I've got to make sure that we don't bend the float. And no matter what the reason is you have removed the tank and the pump assembly, make sure that you cover the top of the tank to make sure that nothing contaminates the fuel. Remove the small circlips to separate the assembly from the reservoir. Be careful not to lose the circlips. Now carefully remove the cables from their holders, which will allow you to separate the top of the assembly from the reservoir. So I've disconnected the fuel pump. Now these clips on the side are a little bit awkward and I get my head in the way, of course, but you need to push the clip out in the centre while squeezing the outer parts in, which will be more obvious when you're doing the job. The colour of the plastic makes it a bit difficult to see what I'm doing. And now there's the clips that are holding the pump in the bottom. There's quite a lot of flex in these, but do be careful. Wouldn't want to break these. But eventually they will ease open.